All right, so welcome, some new faces here tonight, so thanks for joining us. If you don't know me yet at all, my name's Stacy Quaid, and I've been a practicing herbalist since about 2002, I guess. And I also practice a modality called healing touch, so it's energy-based therapy. And so we've been going through these courses or these classes, and they've kind of built on each other and woven in and out of each other. So if you've missed any of the previous ones, they have them recorded on the Co-op YouTube channel. And so if you're hearing words that aren't familiar, if I say, remember when we talked about, well, actually none of you really have been in any of those past classes. And has anybody watched any of the first videos at all? Okay, so that's some good information. We've gone through and talked about different ways that we understand how plants can work with us, the clues that they give us when they're growing. That's called the doctrine of signatures. We talked about herbal constitutions and people constitutions, and talked about things like flavors like bitter, sweet, sour, and then talked about how that matches with things like damp, dry, hot, cold in our tissue states. So those are some of the things that we keep in mind as a foundation. Today we're doing a lot of just basic plant ID, so that you can look for things that are growing right now in the yard or in the woods around you. And so we're going to look at a few different herb friends of ours. I do have a couple of sets of pictures here that some of the pictures we have up on the screen are different than the ones in here, because these are two complete sets. They're alphabetical, so you guys can kind of share if you want, and maybe it might be good for you to come up. We may or, yeah. Sure, yeah, that's good. We're only going to refer to those if we need to get a better picture from what I don't have. We're going to flip between some pictures I actually took just today, and then a PowerPoint that I have that I've shared with Andre. So if you want the handout for that PowerPoint, you can ask him for it. And it's got some nice text descriptors of where plants grow, what do they look like, when do you pick them, and all of those things. So let's see. Well, let's just get started here. Some of the ones in the pictures, I have samples for us to taste and take a look at, and some of them I don't. So can everybody see that okay, or do we want the light down a little bit more? I don't know. Is that okay? Okay. So these are ostrich ferns. Have you any experience with fiddleheads? Okay, let's see. Okay, this is me here. Oh, I bet you that's one of the ones that didn't show up. So this is, no, okay. So this is an ostrich fern, and these are the fiddleheads that are still left that could be edible, right? And the way that we take a look at the ostrich fern that's different from a lot of the other kinds of ferns is that, can you see that brown papery covering? That was covering that whole little tendril that was coming out of the ground. And that's one of the signature things that you want to look for when you're looking for ostrich ferns. You have a picture, a different picture in there, and they're all alphabetical unless you rearranged them already. That shows you some different stages of growth. So right now, these are like the only two small ones enough to eat in this patch in my yard. The rest of the ferns were already about this tall and unraveled and past eating. So if you're interested in still gathering and where there's a patch out in the woods, there's still some that you could gather and maybe get another jar full for putting vinegar on or eating for supper. Saute them a little with butter. They're full of all kinds of nutrition and they taste really yummy. So they taste a little bit like asparagus and they're very tasty. So I had another picture of them growing up bigger, but we don't have that one. So
I had a question about like how days to harvest.
okay,
As far as not in like one.
good question.
Yeah.
So you're going to see usually some fairly good patches of them unless they're just trying to get established or maybe something has happened. And they grow in a rosette of usually about 5 to 9 little stalks that are going to come up. And typically the rule of thumb is like no more than 3 from each little bunch, you know. And you can pick them when they're a little bit longer. So I don't know in your experience if you've picked them when they're just like little tiny buttons, but you can wait till the stalk gets about 4 inches long and then pick them. And then you're going to get, you know, more food value and be able to still sustainably harvest.
I'm going to go on the other end of that. How do you stop them from spreading? Because we have 2 gardens of them, and no matter what we do, they're pushing out. They're going on the opposing side of the sidewalk. They're just going everywhere.
Yeah, they have a really strong root system and they're very tight together. So you have to just dig down and dig them out. Yeah.
Or eat more.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a case of like maybe just eat all of the tops. I'm joking. But I'm sure there would be very many happy people if you did dug them up and did a curb alert.
Okay.
So.
If they're in the cities, but yes.
The only ones in the cities, that's why.
All right. I'll get that.
All right. You need to exchange contact information. Okay, let's move on. Some of these we had talked about last week, but now we get new people. How do I do this?
You have to arrow up to the next one.
Arrow up.
No, this is
Oh, like this. Like this?
Yeah.
Got it. This is mullein. Do we know mullein?
Yeah, I feel like I've seen that.
Okay, so mullein is a biannual, so it grows. Okay, we're gonna try not to get everybody full of mud. This is a mullein, little baby. This is a first-year plant. What I want you to do is feel the texture of the leaves. Can you feel how fuzzy and thick they are? Feel those little tiny hairs on there? So, and you should have a picture of mullein in your pile. So this is a first-year rosette. So this isn't going to get any bigger than, well, it's going to spread out more and the leaves are going to get bigger on the ground, but it's not going to go up until next year. Next year, when it grows, it's going to get a big stalk up the middle, and you'll see these usually like on kind of the drier upside of a ditch bank, you know, where it's gravelly or on the edge of a field or something like that, where it's kind of warm and the dirt is real dry and sometimes hard, and they can be big. Like the leaves on that upstalk, you know, they'll stick out. They stand out on the side of the road. They can be, you know, 10 inches long, 12 inches, sometimes bigger if they really like where they're growing. And the plants get like this. Most of the time they just have a one flower thing stalk coming up in the middle, but sometimes they'll have a couple and they'll look more a little antlery. But typically you're going to see them looking like that. So one of the things that mullein is used for widely, and people know more about it now since COVID, is it's a very specific lung remedy. So when those leaves get bigger, I mean, they actually match the size and shape of your lung. And that's one of the signatures of that plant. And the little tiny hairs on there is the other signature, because in our lungs we have little tiny villi and alveoli, which are the way that the lungs move the blood and oxygen through there. And so that's the other piece of that could be good for our lungs. And it's also usually plants that have little fuzzies or pricklies on them is sometimes an indicator that they're going to be good for skin issues. Okay, so those are ways that we use this. The other thing that is interesting about mullein is where those leaves come off the stalk, they actually really resemble our vertebrae. And so one of our teachers, Matthew Wood, has learned and shared that this is really good for spinal issues and particularly disc issues. And it helps to balance the fluid. Mullein is in a category of herbs we call lymphatics. The reason it helps with all of these things is it helps the lymph system of our body. And our lymphatic system moves the waters of our body, and it helps to clear. Our lymphatic system is kind of like our sewer system of our body. So it's constantly flushing and moving and removing, and it's tied in that way that it helps with that clearing process to the immune system. So that's another layer of why it works for colds and things like that. So we use it as a tea or a tincture. Topically, it infuses really well into oils to make salves for skin issues and things like that, or to put in a topical for discs and things. I have it in several of my musculoskeletal herb blends. So, any questions about mullein?
So when you say biennial, does the plant die and have to go to reseed after 2 years, or is it just come up every other year?
So once the second year plant grows, that one seeds. And then the next year is like little first year plants, and then that'll grow and seed, and then, so it's on like a 2-year cycle. So anytime there's a biannual plant, any biannual plant, you're wanting to think about which ones to harvest. So you can harvest the first year plants when they're really, really little, or the second year plants once they're done doing their thing, like in the fall, and their energy is going back down into the ground and they're kind of done, but they're still vital. So then you would be harvesting the top leaves at that point. We also use the flowers. The flowers, if you look close at them, I don't know if there's a close-up of the flower, but it looks like an ear. See that it looks like the inside of your ear? So the flowers are used in like for earaches and things like that. And there's a really common blend where you mix the mullein flowers with garlic, and it makes a really good ear remedy for people that get congestion and earaches all the time. So, yeah, the root is used as well. We actually use the root to go deeper in like if the lungs are not clearing well with the leaves, then I might put the root on board to get deeper in there and help in that way, or add something else at that point. Any other questions about mullein? All right, we're going to go over. Oh, we got 2 copies of that one. Oh, there's the big one. So those little guys were right in there. So you can see, if you looked out in the woods, it'd be like, oh, I missed it, I'm too late. But there's still quite a few of them in there.
So I saw a bunch of ferns at Jay Cook last Tuesday, but I didn't know how to distinguish them. What other ones tend to be around here?
Ones that we really encourage, just to look for the ostrich ferns for edibility. There's interrupted ferns, there's lady ferns, there's bracken ferns all over the place. There is sensitive ferns. What else do we have around here? They're all a little different looking, different sizes. The other clue to making sure that it's an ostrich fern is that a lot of the other ferns have a round stem. And an ostrich fern, the stem has a groove in it like a piece of celery. And that's all in that handout that you're going to ask Andre to send you. So, lots of details in there. Anybody recognize this guy? Well, there's two plants in there. Focus on the fuzzy one. There are violets. We'll talk about them both. It is yarrow. It's yarrow. Who knows about yarrow? Who knows yarrow? What do you know about yarrow?
Going back, I thought the idea of it being for wounds.
It is for wounds. A very special wound specialist. What else do you remember about it? What details wise? Anything? So yarrow's Latin name is Achillea millefolium. So if you take a close look at the leaves, they're cut all the way to the stem. And if you look closer, each little leaf that's cut to the stem is also cut to the center of that little stem. And if you get a magnifying glass and you look closer, each one of those little leaves is cut all the way to the stem. Plus, if you look at your picture, there is lots of little tiny white flowers at the top. Okay? So many flowers, because each one of those flowers is actually a bunch of little flowers. So the signature that this is for wounds and particularly for cuts is that cut all the way deep to the stem. So yarrow is really good at healing deep cuts or deep wounds. And there's a lot of plants that are really good at wound healing, but sometimes they're not quite good at getting all the way to the bottom of things. Yarrow does that. So if there's a deep cut, it's going to work to heal it from the inside up and help it stitch back together. It has properties of antiseptic, antimicrobial. It is analgesic, so it also helps with pain with those situations. It's a blood mover. Matthew Wood calls yarrow the master of the blood, because if you have a cut that's bleeding profusely, yarrow will help to balance that out and stop that cut from bleeding so much. It's also used in conditions where we're not bleeding enough. And it helps to move blood where that's stuck, like in a bruise. You can put yarrow on topically to help move a bruise. It's also used for in female menstrual cycle problems, like if the period is kind of stuck and needs a little bit of a nudge. Yarrow sometimes can do that and help that flow to start. And that can be a godsend for some people. It's a bitter nervine, and the nervine piece is that analgesic property. So it's used as a digestive bitter as well, and for internal tissue healing. So if you want to have a bit of an organoleptic experience, do you know that word? Organoleptics means that we are using our sensory organs to help figure out the properties of the plant. So if you want to take a piece of the leaf, if you want, and you can chew on it and see what it does for you and see how it feels. This is one of the ways that if you were like out in the woods or out in the yard or whatever and you needed to treat a wound like right now, this is what you would do. You would take the yarrow and you'd chew it up and you'd stick it on there. So we use a lot of our wound and first aid remedies in that way. So as you give yourself a couple of minutes or a minute and tell me what's happening, what's showing up, what's it doing for you? What kind of flavory things? Is it making your mouth dry out? Is it making it salivate? Is it doing neither of those? Kind of parsley-ish, so a little sharp tasting. Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Oh yeah, it's kind of drying out.
It's a little bit astringing. So like if you took a whole big mouthful of it, you know. So if you had a bigger area that you were wanting to treat, this you wouldn't want to chew up like handfuls of leaves. You'd want to chop them up and make an infusion and then use that as a poultice or a compress. So, anybody else have any thoughts on?
Can't believe how it maintains its sort of crunchiness. I mean, seriously, it was in my mouth for 2 minutes now. I'm still like, yeah, I'm doing it.
Yeah, there's more napkins if people want to spit stuff out.
Oh, I kind of like it. It's great.
Okay. So, mixed in there is some violets. We're going to talk about them in a minute. We're going to do a little in between because this was growing in with the yarrow and I couldn't resist because this is one of the most tasty things that you can add to your salad. And this is called sheep sorrel. Have you ever seen sheep sorrel before? Take a look at the leaf. You might want more than one. See how it looks like a little sheep's head? You know, like those on the sleep commercials with those cartoon sheep? Just like that. And then, if you taste it, there isn't a picture. This was just kind of an extra one that came along for the ride.
I mean, there's a bigger sorrel that I know.
There's
but not
all
this
kinds
one.
of sorrels.
Tastes like
Yeah,
that.
it does taste like that, doesn't it? This one's wild. It just grows everywhere, and it'll grow in like a more dry, kind of dry soil, dry garden, and it's one of those ones that like nature uses as a patch. So if you like the flavor of it, it's really good in salads, on sandwiches, in a pesto, so any herb that has that kind of soury flavor like that is something called oxalic acids in them. And some people are sensitive to those, like if you're eating big handfuls of certain kinds of dark greens, things like sorrels, rhubarb, and sour apples and things like that all kind of have that same green apple-y taste. Sometimes people can get too much of a good thing, and that can start to inhibit calcium absorption. So if you're liking these flavors and you want to incorporate them more and use them, you know, through the spring and summer, a good way to do it is to steam, lightly steam or saute those kinds of foods like spinach and the dark greens and things and the sorrels, or just, you know, don't like make it 90% of your diet, you know. So people with like really severe osteoporosis or something like that, I would caution. Most normal people, it's usually pretty okay. So
And what was that one called again?
sheep sorrel, and if you think about the little shape of that sheep head. Okay, let's see who's next. Is that this one?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, this is bee balm, Monarda fistulosa. Okay, bee balm is a member of the mint family. And I have a few different mint family plants here. Just for comparison, we're going to keep doing this organoleptic thing. Because even though they're all part of the mint family, they all have very different flavors. You need a more dry paper towels. And Monarda is not minty at all. Have any of you had any experience with Monarda?
So I've grown it and seen it. I thought the wild one was only the Monarda one, the fistulosa was the cultivated.
Actually, it's the opposite of that. The fistulosa is the wild one, and it's real light purple. And the cultivars are the didymas, and they're the red ones and the blue ones and those like that. I don't have a picture of this one grown up either, but again, you can go ahead and taste a little bit, smell it. It's got a very unique smell and fragrance. Monarda is, again, likes to grow in kind of dry, like fields and things like that. You can see it on hillsides. It's great for the bees. That's why they call it bee balm. It's oily, and it has, I'm not going to say anything about the properties more than that until you all give it a whirl. And then we'll talk about what it's used for.
There's a cool bunch of it on the UMD campus.
Yes, there is.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like that stuff.
It smells so good.
Yeah, you can smell it from 10 feet, 15 feet away.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about that one?
Deep peppery at first.
Kind of hot? Uh-huh. What else? What happens after the heat goes away?
There's a little bit of a mouthful cool sensation.
A little cooling?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Even though the flavor is more citrusy.
What do you think, Susie?
I think it seems a little astringent to me. It seems that it's
Uh-huh. A little bit trying?
I'm getting a little bit of oregano.
Uh-huh. Yep. And sometimes this plant is nicknamed wild oregano, even though it is not wild oregano. Similar properties. So what do we know about like things like oregano? So oily, right? Antimicrobial, astringent, antifungal. So it's antiviral. So it's used lung conditions, skin conditions. So you tasted the hot and you tasted kind of that astringent. So we looked to the constitutions of like hot and damp. Okay, so pussy wounds, infections. In the late summer, you know how some plants will get that mold on the leaves? This one does that. And that's the signature, that fungus that is good for. Now we don't want to pick it at that point, but it's very, very specific to like UTIs and bladder infections and the kidney system because of those volatile oils. It's also used topically, so it's hot, but it actually is in the like cures like world of herbalism. It's used for burns. It's a superb burn healer, even though it's also got that pussy wet affinity. So very, very, look for it, forage it, plant the seeds in your yard. The cultivars can be used in a similar way, but they're all gonna have different degrees of that heat and oil. Some of them smell really skunky, and so again, you can kind of figure out what it is you want to use it for. If you're, the Monarda in my front yard tastes totally different than the Monarda in my backyard. So oftentimes I'll blend everybody together for the year, but sometimes I'll keep things separate. Someone needs something a little more mild, or I don't have to add so much of another balancing herb to it, then that's kind of a good thing too. So, questions about Monarda? Who's next? So all these things right now, this was today, so this is when you're looking around for things about the size in our area right now. If you're a little more south, things are going to be a little further ahead.
Oh, so these were today, you said?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, like 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Fantastic. That's
So,
amazing.
and so these are the sizes. So,
Okay.
do we know these? I think I have a close-up of the leaf. These are red currants. And can look at, they're already making their berries. I know, so exciting. Okay, see the leaf? All currant cousins have that shaped leaf. It's kind of pointy, it's got that, they're very specific that way, kind of almost like, not quite a very cut out maple leaf shape. So red currants, there's black currants, there's white currants, there are gooseberries, and is that all of them? Growing in our woods. So they're not usually as big as this plant here. In the woods that are more dappled, they're going to be smaller. They might just have a few little, but they will still, if they're getting enough sun through the trees, they will get berries. And you can see right now those little racemes are out there, and you can look around and find them. If you're lucky and you come across like an old farmstead or something like that where there's like trees and then maybe some field, look along the edge of there and you can often find not just currants but like blueberries and, you know, old asparagus patches and things like that. So those are good places if you're out, you know, just driving down the country roads and looking around for stuff to keep an eye on. So I love currants. Currants are so good for us. Their seeds, especially the black currant seeds, have some really important essential fatty acids in them, and they're super nutritious. They're antioxidants, you know, so, and they're really sturdy. If you're wanting to like cultivate anything like for berries, this is a really good one because they're prolific and they're sturdy, and they really do like our climate pretty well. So. Okay, this is, anybody know this one? It's kind of hard to tell right now. I have a close-up of the leaves.
The stalks?
It's this green right now is what's growing. That's last year's plant. So that's what you're wanting to look for in the field right now.
Can't tell if it's tansy or not.
It's not tansy. That's a close-up. This is actually another mint family plant. This one we might have to turn the light on for. This is St. John's wort. Okay, you have a picture of St. John's wort, and I want you to take a look at it because those stalks that you saw sticking up are going to be what you're going to see about that height of that kind of scrubby little bush-looking thing. Okay? This one doesn't have much taste, but I want you to, I'm going to turn the light on. Everybody take a leaf and look at that. Does this just go on here? You see that picture of the close-up of the leaf on your poster with the little holes in it? Those are actually little perforations in the leaf. And if you hold it up to the light, you can see the little pinholes. Sometimes it's easier to do out in the sun, maybe these lights, but so those little holes actually secrete oil, and the oil is part of the healing properties. Okay, so St. John's wort is for nerves, and in herbal context, most of the time plants with yellow flowers can be associated with nerve or nervous things. Okay, so we've got the bright yellow flowers, we've got the pinpricks, so nerves, nerve pain, sciatica, shooting, poking pain, and also, you know, St. John's wort is used in commerce for calming mental health, and it's not for balancing mental health from like, it's for mental health that's going, bug me, bug me, bug me, bug me, poke, 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 like the signature of the poke holes. So for nervous system issues that are pokey or stabbing, it's super good for that. And also, because of that puncture in a physical way, it's good for punctured wounds. So it's another deep wound healer. So if you've got a deep wound or infection that is just something that's just really having a hard time clearing it up topically, yarrow and St. John's wort together are a great combination. So that is one that should be in everybody's backpack when they're going out into the woods, because it's got all those uses. It's topical for pain, it's a wound healer, it's a blood purifier, and it helps you sleep when the ground is hard. So, all of those things. So, very, very useful. And again, let's back up so you can kind of see how tall.
Do you have any tricks to growing them? Because I have tried a couple of times, and I can get all the way through summer, and they look gorgeous, and then they never come back in the spring.
Is it in pretty crappy dirt?
Hmm?
Is it in pretty crappy dirt?
Not at all.
You might want to try crappier dirt.
Okay.
You know,
Don't have anything.
when you find it like out, it's really in like a field, like dry, grassy, by where the monarda grows. Let's see. It took me a while to get it. Where is it? There. So those little plants were that big, and so the stalks there probably like so. You know, it can get taller if it's liking where it's growing. I've picked it out where it's like waist high. So the other signature, if the yellow flower, as you're picking the flowers for your medicine, your fingers start to turn bright red. So the hypericin that's in there, the medicine, that's the other signature of what this is for. It's a blood cleaner. It helps our liver, which is why it has so many contraindications with different pharmaceuticals, because it's so good at its job that it will help to clear stuff out maybe before they want that to be out of the system. And it also works on the pathways where some of those mental health herbs work. So this is one that used with caution, but topically, you can't go wrong with it. St. John's wort has a sun sensitivity caution. So using it topically or internally as a tea or anything in the summer can put you at greater risk for getting sunburned. So there's just another caution there. Let's see, oopsie. This one? Anybody recognize this guy? I think we have two pictures. Yeah, that's a little bit taller. That one was probably about this tall. I did not pick any of these because I need them to get a little bit bigger for my medicine cupboard. Those are about this tall right now. Any clues? Anybody? Susie?
Is the stem like
It's not a mint. It's
How big does it get?
Is it a younger nettle?
It is a younger nettle. Yay, 10 extra points. There's a picture in there. So these you could still eat the little two tops without getting in trouble with the sting. Those other taller ones that I'm saving to harvest, to capture the sting, were about 8 inches tall. So the sting,
Was it that big?
stinging nettle, yeah. Look at it, you'll see the progression if you look at your picture there of the sizes. So the thing that makes the nettle sting is called formic acid. And formic acid is also the same thing that ants have in them that makes their bites hurt. Okay? Stinging nettle, once it stings you, and if you get that rash and that burningness, you pick the offender and you let it sit for about 20 minutes, and the sting breaks down, the formic acid breaks down, it goes away, and then the nettle becomes its own cure. So you rub it after it's done stinging and the little hairs don't bother you anymore, and then you put it on where it burned you and it soothes it. So nettle is the highest count of plant protein in a green herb, so it's super nutritious. It's got tons of trace minerals. It tastes great. You can make, with the little tiny young plants, you can eat them fresh on salads, in pestos. As they get bigger, the way that you moderate that, if you still want to eat them, is you cook them. So people make soup, people make tea. And nettles is it's in a category of herbs called adaptogen. So an adaptogen is like a tonic herb, and there's a certain number of very special adaptogens in this whole category, which we did a whole YouTube is on the YouTube co-op channel, so you can look at that. But stinging nettles is really good for the immune system. The stinging part is what helps us with allergies. So when I go to pick the nettle for my tinctures, I bring the jar right out there. You know, if I'm gonna be out in the field somewhere and away from like my home, so I want to capture that sting right away, is you bring your alcohol or your glycerin or whatever right with you, and you chop up your herb out there and get it in the jar and cover it right away, so that goes into the menstruum when you're gathering it. If you're close enough to a freezer and you want to keep it fresh, you can we'll rinse it off a little bit and put it in the bag while it's still stingy. And middle of December, if you forget what's in that bag and you open it up, you will remember, because it still works. So it's another way to capture it if you're not a tincture taker, but you want to have that available and that level of its properties. You can then just break off little pieces of it and make tea out of it in the winter. Nettles works with our immune system on so many other layers as well, because it's so full of nutrition and minerals and things that we need. So if you can't get, a tincture or gather it yourself and capture that sting, you're still going to get benefit from, buying it from the bulk bin or getting a supplement for yourself at the co-op. So, it's just a little bit more better if you can get that sting.
So I have a question about how this all sort of works. Because I have not really harvested, I've fallen into patch of nettles without much clothing on, and that was really uncomfortable. But, so if you let it sit out, okay, so the hairs, do they actually penetrate your skin and inject the folic acid, or is it just?
They're a little bit pokey, they're stiff. I think it's more of a topical response though.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then if you let it sit out, does the formic acid change?
It breaks down.
Okay,
It just breaks down. Like when you cook the spinach and it breaks down the oxalic acid. Yeah. We don't want to pick the nettles after they're about 18 inches tall, because they have some little crystalline pieces of their structure that get more pronounced, and they can be irritating. So after 18 inches-ish, it starts to get its flower on the top. Then we're done with that, unless you're going to gather the seeds. And then you wait until the fall, and then you gather the seeds. Okay, but we're done with the leafy part of the plant. Okay. So I think we're done with these pictures for right now. We're gonna go back to these live plants, and if we have time at the end, we'll go back into the the PowerPoint and look at some of the other ones that I didn't bring in person. Okay. So, there was that one more planting. All right, here we go. You guys might recognize this little buddy. You know this one? Who is that?
Is it a plantain?
It is a plantain.
Well, they're nice and little.
Nice, they are. Yep, they are right now. They are going to get bigger, but they're still, they don't come up as early as I used to think they did in the yard, you know? So, have you met plantain before? So, there's a picture in there. So those plants grow very close to the ground. Does that look familiar to you? Yeah. They usually grow in kind of patchy areas. They grow where the ground has been just like destroyed, basically. It's got a nickname of white man's footprint.
What's it?
White man's footprint. It grows where the ground is really hard packed, and that's the clue of what it does for us. Okay, it has to suck its life out of the ground with a lot of effort, and that's what it does for us. It sucks things out. It's the herbal drawing agent. So, mosquito bites, bee stings, abscesses from a tooth, any kind of something that's in our body that we want out of there, it's very useful and helpful. I've used it as an eye wash to help remove metal slivers from people's eyeball. My husband was a mechanic for a long time, and with metal and grinding and stuff, and every once in a while he'd get a metal sliver in his eye, and if you go to the ER to get that pulled out, they prop your eye open and just get it out of there without any, So he came home one night and he was like, oh, I got another one of these in my eyes. I'm like, really? Before you go down and spend the rest of your night down there, you want to just try this? Because he was not super on board in the early days. And so, okay, fine. So I made a tea, and we just rinsed and compressed, and it was better in less than 10 minutes. So if you have a sliver that you can't get out, just a different part of your body or something, this is another one where you chew it up. So we could pass that back around actually, because this one has a whole different sensory experience than the yarrow or the sheep sorrel. So you chew it up and stick it on. So if you've got a little area and you stick it on and you want to put a Band-Aid over it and leave it on there a little while. If you've got something going on in your mouth, like an irritated gum or something, you can just grab the leaves and kind of use it like chewing tobacco. Just chew on it for a little bit, suck on the juice, tuck it. If it's infected, spit that juice out, and then replace it once you get sick of it, spit that one out, get a different one. So, how's that feeling? What's different there? It's pretty bitter, huh? Wow. What other sensations are you getting?
Dense.
Yeah? A little bit of astringent. Is anybody getting a little bit of mucilage out of the deal? Mucilage? Oh, that didn't work. Oh, these might not be big enough. Hmm?
There's something a little gritty, but it might just be
The dirt. These are not big enough to pull apart yet, but when this plant gets bigger, here's one. See this? See how that's stretchy? Okay, they used to make ropes out of plantain. In the olden days, they grow a really big plantain, and then they take these fibers. This is very, very stretchy, and these stretchy strings, if you notice, they go, and you probably can see maybe on that picture, straight all the way up the stem. There's no little branching off of, I'm going to pass this back around again. There's no little branching off of side veins or anything. They just go straight up. Here, you take this one. I'll bring this one back here. So that mucilaginous part is in that stretchy band. You can try and pull this one off and see if you can pull another one out. But so thinking about internally, like connective tissues, helping to retention. So it's astringent and it's moistening and lubricating. So it works really good for things like our esophageal sphincter. When people have reflux, it can help to tonify and also moisten and lube that up so that it works better, so that people can maybe have some more success with not getting that reflux and needing to do like Prilosec or things like that. So, you know, you're making quite a list, buddy.
Just keep it in my bag.
Okay. So another one that pairs good with plantain, if you're needing something mucilaginous and tasty. That's another picture that we missed. There was a beautiful picture of violets. So these are little wild violets, viola. Super yummy. Try a leaf and a flower. This is a great, if you can find those violets right now, those are so good in salads. They're succulent, they're moistening, they're a cooling lymphatic is what we call them. So not only are they tasty, they help our lymphatic system and they cool us down. Because they're mucilaginous, they've got that slamification factor, they're good for throats, sore throats, irritated coughs, those kinds of things. They're nice and sweet, as, you know, like a sweet green.
The last one?
Yeah, yep. So right now, again, in our area, they're just popping up the last couple of days, like all over. There's all different colors of violets, and they're all interchangeable. So there's the purple ones, there's little white ones, there's yellow ones in the woods, you know, and the other piece, if you notice that the heart-shaped leaf, so in terms of our lymphatic system and moving fluids, it also, in that secondary way, works with our cardiovascular system, because our lymph system and our cardiovascular system are tied together. So on a physical level, it helps with issues in that way. But violet's also one that's used really frequently and broadly as a flower essence for matters of the heart, of the emotional heart. It's a really nice, supportive flower essence if someone is doing heart stuff with their emotions. It's got a lot of layers. Some people get really into it and they like candy the flowers. Have you ever seen candied flowers? Usually the bigger varieties are the ones that they use to do that with and make them sugary. But yeah, so pick and eat these. They're really yummy. Okay. Another great one for your salad. Let's see if anybody recognizes this. You like that one, huh?
I kind of like that turd there. It's good.
That's another picture that didn't pop up either. Any ideas? It's a wildflower. Mm-hmm. It does look like arugula, doesn't it?
Just a little bit, I know, it's.
But the root just tricking us because it's hacked off.
Well,
So it's
yeah,
probably
I
a
thought it was gonna
deeper.
be muscle.
Yeah, it was part of a bigger clump. I just took part of it off. That is the leaf from a oxeye daisy. Okay, the common field daisy, the she loves me not daisy, just grows everywhere in the spring now. Those are daisy leaves. Tasty, full of nutrients. Also have a fairly high oxalic acid, so balance that out. Yeah, lots of minerals in there. Also, what are you noticing in your mouth? What's it doing to your sensory pieces? Was it drying? Was it moistening? Was it? Need more leaves? Need more leaves? Yeah, normally if you're doing an actual organoleptics class, you like stick to like 2 or 3 things and you just take the whole time to do it. But this is more about, look, these are growing and this is what they look like right now, so find them. So it's got a little bit of both. It's kind of like plantain. This one also can be used as an eye wash or a wound wash, scrapes and cuts and things like that. It can help to clear things and help them heal. So there's lots of these first aid plants around in our yards and in the fields and things for you to be able to use. Once these leaves get a little bit bigger and the plant starts to grow up, it does get more bitter, like most greens do, and then people don't maybe like to put so many of them in their salads anymore. But it's still, even just a little handful for some different flavor is nice. So
So is the oxalic, I'm just wondering, because I'm not convinced that's dirt, but I'm getting like this sort of grittiness, and is the oxalic acid in some sort of crystalline form, or is it just, I'm just wondering if that's the crunch that I'm getting.
well, it's more like in the actual leaf
Just
of the
full
plant.
leaf. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know. It's probably dirt.
Well, those are really good.
Yeah. All right, we got 2 more just to take a look at here. These are both from the same family. We'll see if you can tell me what family. There's a. Let's see. I would just wring this one out a little bit, or a lot. Okay, so these are 2 different plants from the same family group, and there's something very specific about them that makes you be able to tell that they are from a certain family, and they have pretty different flavors. So take some of each, and you can take more than 1 leaf. There's plenty there. So, and then we'll just but take a look at them for a second and see if you can see what's the same or what's different with the 2 side by sides. Oh, he just made the test harder. They just slam shut when the weather gets a certain.
Yeah, it was really low when I was walking, the projector was shaking.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it's the wind.
20 to 30 miles an hour tonight, it said.
That'd be great driving regulations.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Square stem.
square stem. What does that mean? Mint. So, two fairly common members of the mint family. Any ideas who the smaller one is? No? Oh gosh, there's many. And there's a lot of plants that don't say mint on the end that are part of the mint family. So,
No idea what while we're deciding, is chocolate mint a mint?
it is. It's a flavored mint. It's, yep, it is. So the small one is lemon balm. Melissa. It doesn't taste super minty. And then the bigger one is actually an orange mint.
Is what?
Orange mint.
Orange.
But I don't think it tastes very orangey. I think it tastes more like spearmint. It's a very mild mint.
Yeah, it tasted like spearmint, but it didn't look like it.
Right.
And I had one
This
mint
is
that was like 10
fuzzy.
years ago.
Fuzzy leaf, did you see the difference? And more round. So, yeah, grow orange mint. It is just so good. And it's mild. So a lot of people, you know, if you're making teas for people, little kids, picky people, you know, fuss budget people, this one is really nice. It goes into blends so well that you can make just about anything palatable with orange mint. And it grows just really well like other mints, and it gets big. You know, it can get like this big, so you can get a lot of bang for your buck. And yeah, so all the same properties of the other mints, you know, antimicrobial, kind of stimulating, soothing to tissues, diffusive, so moves things. That's why we use them for, you know, clearing sinuses and things like that. But again, on that spelt curve of not super hot peppermint, you know, it's down over here on this milder, more gentler area for little kids' tummies and things like that. Lemon balm or Melissa is more, has a little bit stronger antiviral properties. It's really specific to the herpes simplex, and so it's good for cold sores. And lemon balm oil, like essential oil, is oftentimes what they use for someone that has that bigger herpes to help with keeping that under control. It's very effective, super expensive that way, but if someone needs it, it's really a good thing for them to know about instead of some of the harder medicines that they might have to take. So it's antiviral, so you can use it for colds and flus. Again, it makes a great tea. It tinctures well. Fresh tincture is just really nice. You capture that flavor. This is another good one to put in the freezer and have fresh. Lemon balm loses its properties pretty fast. Like, it's one that you want to harvest every year. Like, by the end of the winter and into the spring, you know, you can open the jar and you can tell it's just not as fragrant anymore, you know, and it just kind of loses its volatile oils fairly quickly. So that one you don't want to get big bushels of every year unless you're planning on using that much.
Does freezing still at all, or is it kind of the same thing? If you freeze it, is it retain some of that?
It does, yeah. Oh, as long as it's in the freezer, sure. Until, you know, you find that freezer burned bag in the back of the pile, but yeah. So it's another way to get that more fresher green thing into your life in the winter. You know, all these herbs you can do that with, really, if you've got a big enough space for it. You know, so, what else about lemon balm? I think that's maybe it. Let me see. Actually, look at my notes. Oh, I don't even have it in this one. That was just growing all over the place in the yard, so I grabbed some so we could look at mint family plants. Okay, so we got about like 15 minutes left. Do we want to go into the that other PowerPoint and look at some of the other herbs, or just have questions about anything in particular, or could pick through the pictures and ask questions?
So I planted ramps in my mom's yard at the base of a tree, probably about 8 years ago, and they keep coming back, but they never spread like that.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's just not getting enough sun, or
They don't like a lot of sun.
Yeah, they like just a little bit
Dappled.
before the leaves come in.
Mm-hmm.
Or whether there's something about the soil, maybe it's too wet.
It might be too wet. It might also be too, like, not rich enough.
Okay.
You know, because if you think about, have you dug ramps out in the woods before ever? So it's real peaty, like black, thick, dense, heavy, peaty kind of, like years of leaves that have decomposed and made like black, like Susie's shirt, dirt.
This area is actually not a deep soil base. There's a lot of rock underneath.
Okay, so you might just be too shallow there. That could be a thing. So if you add another bit of dirt around them, and they can grow a little bit deeper, or maybe try and spread out a little bit. Yeah, they're still out there. They're starting to die back a little bit, but you can still like see them. The woods are still pretty open, and so if you haven't been out there, go get your free onions. So they dry well. You know, put them in vinegar, or freeze them. I have found that if I freeze them, you really need to like double bag them or something, because they're so potent. Like everything will smell like the leeks.